Hi everyone, my name's Freya Savitri Sampson from Earth Heart, and I'm here today with the goddess of the Tuart trees, Evelyn Taylor, who is the president of the Ludlow Tuart Forest Restoration Group in the southwest of Western Australia. Good afternoon, Evelyn.
Hello, Freya, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
So, Evelyn, can you share with us how it is that the reforestation group began?
I have lived in the southwest on and off since I was a very small child, and I, in the early 60s, I married a forester, and at the end of the 60s, he was responsible for the area where the Tuart Forest is, or where the southern section of the Tuart Forest is. As my parents were farmers, and I was very keen on growing things, and I just became involved and immensely interested in what was happening to this Tuart Forest, because the Tuart Forest originally was 110,000 hectares, and it's now down to less than 3,000, which means that we have actually taken out nearly 98% of this forest. And it's well known within the botanical world. This forest is the only native Tuart forest in the world, and it grows on a limestone ridge between south of Busselton to north of Perth. And it's now, the majority of it, of that 3%, less than 3%, is located in the area which is adjacent to Busselton, called Ludlow. So it's the national part of it is national park. Part of it is under the direction of the DBCA, the Department of Biodiversity, Attractions and Management. In 2017, the people in the area were asked to submit submissions to the federal government because it was thought that the forest needed to be placed on the critically endangered list. And people that had been trying to do something about the forest were suddenly galvanised into realising that this might be an opportunity to try to get people's attention about the forest. And how many times can you drive through the forest, look at it and know that it's in trouble and do nothing? So I decided that I needed to actually do something and not apologise to the forest anymore. So I had been involved in a group in Capel, and I knew a lot of people have similar thoughts. So I lobbied those people to organise a meeting to see whether we could get enough support to try to make something happen. Prior to that, I actually called a DBCA to see whether they would support a community involvement. I did know that within the forest management plan for the Tuart Forest, there is a section that suggests that the community can have some involvement in this. So I called them, and they indicated yes, there would be no problem about that. I made it quite clear, actually, please don't inform me that you will and then not do it, because that's just going to waste everybody's time. So the next day, the person who's absolutely responsible for this in the Busselton division called me, and I had a meeting with him in the Busselton office with two other foresters. Put to them a proposal that if we could get a group together, would they support us? And they were very enthusiastic. So I then thought, well, let's get the meeting happening, and let's put to the meeting what a suggestion of trying to do something, which I did. And we had, I think, 20 people came to the meeting. So I just put, along with those 20 people came a person who had actually been responsible for looking after the Ludlow forest in the 70s, called Des Donnelly, who is a retired forester. And he's very enthusiastic, and he had been trying also for a very long time to try and make something happen. So fortunately, that all came together, because this is rather a large task. And so the next meeting, they came back and 6 more people came.
Fantastic.
So it was decided to set the group up, which is what we started to do. We've had nobody leave the group, and we've had some extra people come on to the committee. And we've got some very, very skilled people on that committee and some very dedicated people. And that's what's driven the whole project. But we do have monthly meetings, official meetings with DBCA, and we also meet with them on a regular basis when we've got problems, because we're undertaking this section of the forest, which is 180 hectares. That was a pine plantation, and the plantation has been cleared off about 10 or 14 years ago, and we're planting into that section. In June, July, we planted into that section almost 17,000 trees with the help of the community and more than 400 school children. When we set this project up, we understood that we needed, for it to be successful, to have the entire community of the Southwest involved in this project.
Yes.
Because this is a significant forest. We have some significant problems, and we need a significant number of people to become involved in it. We now have 500 members, more than 500 members of our group. And we have had a huge success with the planting program that we ran in June, July. We invited 58 schools between Bunbury and Vass to a meeting in the Capel Shire to explain to them our project and explain how we were going to organise it and what help we would require. And from that, we had more than 400 school children come to plant, which was hugely successful. And these young children are told about the environmental problems that we're having, but they're not given any opportunity to do anything about it. And this did give them an opportunity, and they were thrilled. So we're going to continue with that, because we need the community to be thoroughly involved. We need everybody to understand that the simplest thing that everybody can do is to plant a tree, and that gives you a feeling of being able to make a difference, and it does make a difference. We have 50,000 more seedlings in the nursery right now for planting in June of June 2020.
That's fantastic.
So we do need to raise some more funds for that, and we've got a project where we're trying to sponsor trees so that people can sponsor a tree, and they can go online, check out our website page, shows you how to sponsor a tree on there. We'd be delighted to have as many sponsors as possible, because we need to raise a very large sum of money to get all the fencing and everything required to make sure this project is successful. We've also taken over the lease of the Ludlow settlement, which was the area where all the forestry people worked from, and we're hoping to set up some museums there to inform people about the importance of this forest, this particular forest, and generally about the importance of forests per se, not just the Tuart forest, but so that people understand what they're looking at when they drive through the forest, and they understand what a healthy forest looks like and a not very healthy forest looks like. Tuart trees have a cycle, and they only flower every 5 to 8 years.
Whoa!
And it happens that this year they have flowered, and so the seeds are almost ripe right now. So in the next 2 weeks or so, we will be collecting seed, which is very fortunate for us, because there's a very minimal amount of seed available, and we need to make sure that we've got enough seed available for the 100,000 trees that we're going to be doing in the next 2 years.
How tall are these trees, and how is it that you actually have to collect the seeds?
Well, we use a cherry picker, and the trees are very tall. The trees are 30 metres and on, and so we have to find a tree that's in a suitable position so that we can put a cherry picker or a basket on the end of a quite long crane to get these seeds off. We've had enormous support from almost everybody that we talk to.
It's wonderful.
When we run the planting program and we need to have facilities there for people, we've got people that supply water, potable water onto the site for no cost. We've got people that do upgrades of the road for no cost. And on our webpage, we have a sponsors section where you can see the people that have been very generous in donating things to us.
That's wonderful. Now, the other thing you said before was that there has been no fires.
There has been no fire in that forest. There's been one section that had a wildfire in 1974, but to my knowledge, there had been no fire in that area for 80 years. But we're expecting that there's quite a seed bank still in the forest floor.
Right.
But we've got the forest floor covered in arum lilies at the moment, and we also have a very large build-up of kangaroos in the area. And it's not considered to be patriotic to talk about doing anything with kangaroos, but at the moment kangaroos are actually destroying their own habitat because they've built up in such numbers that they just eat the bark off the side of the trees. And if we allow a fire in there, or if there is a fire in there, and all these seeds generate, then the kangaroos are just going to eat the whole lot. So that's why we've got a fence around, a protective fence around the area that we're planting, just to keep the kangaroos out until the trees get to a certain height so that they won't be bothered by the kangaroos. Because if we didn't, it would just be a total waste of time. And we do control rabbits as well. So we have to make sure that we've got minimal amounts of those for the first 5 or 6 years of the planting program.
How are you managing to get the fencing done?
Well, we've got 30 hectares that we've fenced, and we've been very fortunate because we've had connection with the Bunbury Prisons Department, and they have day release prisoners that have been extremely helpful in the project that we're doing. They come on a regular basis, and they are very enthusiastic about our project, and they are skilled, and they're working out there. They've done a hugely successful job, and so the whole area has been fenced with a very tall kangaroo-proof fence, also rabbit-proof. So without them, we would have, the cost would have been enormous. So the labour cost of the fencing has been almost minimal. But mind you, the cost of the materials is quite large. So it's been hugely successful. They also help us at the Ludlow settlement with the project that we've got on. The settlement was 100 years last year. We had a centenary celebration where we tried to inform the public about what we wanted to do, what had happened in the Ludlow settlement, because that was a major mill and it was a major outlet for Tuart timber, because the Tuart trees grow very close to the coast. It was very easy for those trees to be shipped out to all parts of the world in the early part of the settlement. And that was because that timber was so sought after and it was so close to the coast. That was a major export, which set the colony up really, because the timber is very good. It's good for boat building and it's good for hardwood of all types. So it was unfortunate for the forest; it was so close to the beach. So we're trying to set up the Ludlow settlement so that we can use it as a point to interest people in the forest, so that we can inform people. We think that the forest is quite a tourist attraction because forests of this type are very rare around the world.
Yes.
Some of the trees in this forest that still exist are up to 500 years old.
Wow.
And they're magnificent species. And anybody that's keen on growing things or has a biological bent would be absolutely awestruck by some of these trees. They're fantastic trees. So we think that given some promotion, that this Tuart Forest could be quite a tourist destination, but we need to do that sensitively, and we need to educate people about the importance of it. So we're hoping that the Ludlow settlement can be a point that we meet people, we explain things to them. We are setting up a museum of what has happened in the forest, how it all happened, where the timber went, how it was milled, just the history of this southwest area, really.
So that's really interesting, the arum lilies. Can you speak a bit more about those in detail? Because they're obviously not an Australian native species. They're from
No,
another part of
no,
the world.
they're definitely not. They're from they're um, hugely sought after as in florists all around the world, except here, because people know that, you know, how devastating they can be. They were introduced in the very early part of the colony, and they escaped from somebody's garden because they have a stamen inside. They're a white lily with a yellow stamen, and as they mature, that stamen becomes, which is where the seed is, becomes sticky, which is very attractive to birds. So the birds take the seeds, and the birds fly off to wherever they feel like flying off.
Yeah.
And guess what happens next? We've got a fertilized seed that's dropped, and so it's very difficult to control the seed.
Well, is there something that the government is doing to contribute to the restoration of the forest floor?
They're allowing us to do what we can. It seems that governments are very short of finance, and so there seems to be no finance of that magnitude that's required to do that, because not only do you need the finance, but you need an awful lot of workers to actually just make sure that this area is monitored all the time, and that the weed control is done. We have just uh, because we're really looking after these seedlings that we've put in. We've just had a whole group of people hand weed 17,000 trees over the
Wow.
last 3 or 4 weeks. So we're very keen to make sure that this project is successful. Let's understand what we've actually got left, and let's understand how important it is, and let's understand how easy it is to make sure that it's looked after, and that it continues, and that we actually expand it. We've had some private individuals offer us some of their farming paddocks to plant trees into, which we're absolutely thrilled about, because this means that people are really, really considering increasing the size of the forest. So we will incorporate these people into our planting program. We're not looking for involvement in these areas long term. We're just looking for some new forests. So the more people that get involved, the better.
So, Evelyn, what is it that the group is in need of right now? What if we're going to put a call out to
we need donations for our sponsorship for trees. That's our most major thing. We have had some funding, some government funding, but it's not sufficient to do the next year's project. So that is taking up a lot of our energy and time, trying to raise funds for this project. So we have to go out and knock on doors, really, to try to get people involved.
And what about
And
skills? What about skills like people who are good with online, who'd be good at setting up GoFundMe projects?
Oh,
Or
perfect. We're looking for those people. We need to understand how important this forest is, and we need to know that this forest is going to be here for the next 2, 3, or 400 years. We're not putting money into something that's going to change overnight or not be there tomorrow. This is not like a road that you can build tomorrow and you can take it away and change it next week, or a 10-story building. a tree needs to stay in the ground, and it needs to stay there for 100 years. So these projects are they're meaningful, and they're there for the next 2 or 3 or 5 generations.
How old can a Tuart tree live for?
Well, we think we've got a Tuart tree that was overlooked because of its shape, and so it wasn't milled. And we think that that tree is at least 500 years old. Think about what was happening in the world when that tree was a seedling. It's quite interesting.
If you could offer a message to the youth of today, who are the ones who are coming up into the world, what would you like to say about trees and the Tuart trees and their importance?
Well, if you think about having some stability in anything, if you plant a tree and you go back and visit that tree, it gives you a sense of stability. It gives you a sense of purpose as well. So it's a nice feeling to plant a tree and then go back and watch that tree. There's something very mindful about seeing a tree grow. I think that there's something in the soul that it resonates with trees. You know, if you want to do something in your life, like get married, or if you want to have your ashes scattered, or if you want to do some meaningful things, you don't go to a car park, do you? You usually find a nice park, or you usually find a nice tree. And so I think it's important for humanity.
And what about the Indigenous element in the area, the native original custodians? You said that
we just didn't bother to ask anybody, did we? We didn't bother to find out the skills of management that these people had, and we should invite these people to be more involved. We're trying to do that. We're trying to politically get Aboriginal people with knowledge more involved in a daily basis with these forests. These people have skills that we just don't possess, in my opinion. That's only my opinion. Maybe not the opinion of the group, but I believe that we should try to get some of the history and get some of the knowledge that these people have. I think we missed a big opportunity there.
I would like to personally thank you so much for everything that you have pioneered, for your passion, for your love, for your devotion, and to everyone who has worked with you, to all of the school kids, the entire group, your committee, to the prisoners from Bunbury Regional Prison and the staff there who support them coming, and everybody else who's involved in the business sector, the government departments, everybody who's working together to create the restoration of the Tuart Forest. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's a pleasure. And I hope it's hugely successful. And I hope that the community just continue to come on board, which I'm sure they will.